Welcome back. Here we are back with our apple again. If your apple file is not open, go ahead and open that. Today is going to be all about adding some detail, learning a couple of new tools, and doing a slight review of some things that we might have touched on briefly in the past. Let's get started. First thing we're going to do here is we're going to start adding some detail to our leaf. The easiest way to add detail is to use the brush tool and the pencil tool. So let's grab our zoom tool to start with and let's zoom in on our leaf. All right, first thing I want to cover is the pencil tool again, but I'm going to use it with another tool together. So I want to grab the pencil and let's set our fill to none, and let's set our stroke to a slightly different shade of green. You can pick whatever color you want, or whatever. It doesn't even have to be green if your leaf isn't green, but I just want you to pick a slightly different shade than your leaf already is. And the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to drag and draw a line that goes down the center. Okay, from here, let's go ahead and increase the stroke up 1 or 2. It doesn't matter. And then I'm going to show you how we can do some breaks in this line. And there's a real simple tool. Some of you have probably already discovered it, and it is the eraser tool. Now the eraser tool is a little challenging because it doesn't work always with certain shapes that you do, so just be patient with it. So the first thing you need to know is that to increase and decrease the size of it is the bracket keys on your keyboard. So the bracket keys are the keys that are next to the P key. If you look over, they're the ones that look like little right angles kind of. So if you click on the left bracket, you can see it's going to take the size of the eraser down. If you use the right, it's going to increase it up. So you can set it at whatever size you want. And I just want you to erase a couple of breaks in your line. Now notice it didn't erase my leaf because my leaf wasn't selected. It was just that center line. Okay, so go ahead and with your pencil tool, you can add a few more lines if you want. We're just adding a little bit of detail in our leaf here. Stop the video, do that now. All right, next thing that we're going to do is I'm going to show you another way that you can add some texture, and that's with the brush tool. So we're going to switch here. I want you to grab your selection tool. I want you to click off in the white space so you don't have anything selected. I want you to grab the paintbrush tool. With the paintbrush tool, again, always leave your fill set to none, your stroke. Let's change it to a slightly different color. So I'm going to change and use this color green. The brush tool works with a palette called the brush panel or brush palette. So we're going to go up to window. We're going to open up brushes. Now in this, some of you might have seen this before. If you expand, there might be a few brushes in here depending on what you've used in the past, but there are more brushes. So we're going to load some more. The way you do that is there's a little button down here called Brush Libraries Menu. I want you to click on that. And we're going to go to Bristle Brushes. Say that 5 times fast. And as you scroll down, you can see there's some different shaped brushes in here. I want you to pick the fan shape brush that's 0.6. And you'll see it's now added that to our brushes panel. Now here's the cool thing. If I grab my selection tool, that's just the black arrow, and I click on that leaf, watch what's going to happen here. I'm going to go to my stroke. I'm going to pick that same color that I had, but I'm going to come over to my brushes panel now, and I'm going to click on that, and it's going to outline. It doesn't look like it, but it's actually outlining that edge of that leaf. You can also see if you click on any of the other ones in here, it's going to outline. So if you don't like that fan brush that it outlined with, you can add a different brush. So I'm going to show you that, and then you can experiment. So if I want to go back to my brushes, maybe I'll go to my decorative, and I'll see what's in here. Ooh, decorative scatter. Now these get really funky in here. And all you have to do to add it is to click it. Okay. I will be honest, the decorative ones, kind of limited in what you can use. You can continue adding if you want to. I'll show you one more. So if I go to maybe borders dashed, so you can add the stroke or change it into your brushes panel. I like that bristle brush, so we're going to leave that there. Pause the video and do that now. Okay. With your leaf still selected, I want to show you one more thing with this option here, this brush tool option. You can make modifications to the stroke itself. So with whatever brush stroke that you have on it. If you come up here into the control panel, you'll notice that you've got this section here, which is your width profile. If you click on that, it's going to give you some options to change how that line is perceived. So uniform means it's going to be the same width all the way through, and it kind of gives you a visual illustration of what that would look like. So if I click on this one, the stroke is going to start thin, get thick, and go back thin again. So you can kind of play with those a little bit if you want to. Stop the video and try that now. That's the width profile. All right, from this point on, let's go ahead and go to File, Save, just so that we save our changes in here. And let's deselect that leaf by clicking in the white space. Okay, we're going to zoom in real tight on that up here on this dark area where the stem kind of connects, and we're going to add a little bit of a shadow here. We're going to do that with the brush tool, not by using it as a stroke option, but just like you would a normal brush. So I want you to grab the brush tool. We're going to set the fill to none, and let's set the stroke to a really dark green. In fact, I'm going to make mine even darker. I want it really, really dark. So I'm just over here in my color panel. Just make sure to change that color if you want to do it manually with the color guide, that you click to make your stroke in front up here. And then we're going to bring that brush. Now it's going to use whatever last brush we had. So I have that bristle brush, and we're going to add some strokes in here. And I just want you to add a few strokes underneath your stem here. Stop the video, do that now. Okay, now we're going to do some blending with this. I want you to grab your selection tool, and I want you to click on one of those strokes that you just created. And because they're all the same stroke and color, we're going to go up to Select, Same, and this is really important. You need to go to Fill and Stroke, because we want to make sure it's only selecting this, not the stroke on anywhere else. And now we're just going to blend this a little bit. So we're going to go up to Window, we're going to open our Transparency panel. Some of us know this panel well, some of us don't. So transparency means how see-through it is. Right now it's 100% opaque, which means because it's on top, it's going to block out everything on this below it. But if I take that dial down, say to 60%, it's going to soften it a little bit. You're going to start to see some of the things that were underneath. So go ahead and change your opacity. All right, let's go to File, Save. And double click the hand tool so we can zoom out, and click in the white space so we can just kind of look and see what we've got. It looks pretty good, not too bad. All right, now we're going to go ahead and we're going to start to work with the gradient tool a little bit more than we have in the past. So the first thing I want you to do is, if your gradient panel is not open, I want you to go up to Window, Gradient, open up that gradient, okay? And I want you to select the apple, the large shape that we created for the apple. We are going to apply a gradient here. So grab your gradient tool. Now to actually apply the gradient, you have to click on the gradient slider in the gradient panel. So we've got the apple selected, we've got this open, we've got our gradient tool selected. Now I'm going to click on the gradient slider. Okay. We're going to take the gradient and we're going to click and drag, oops, sorry. Click and drag across. Why am I locked? Give me 1 second here, guys. Oh, because I had my swatch. Okay, so that was a good learning lesson. So whenever you're troubleshooting, the reason that it wasn't applying was because I was on the stroke rather than the fill. All right, so I've applied my gradient. I'm going to go back in time just so you can kind of see me do this again, so you're not too utterly confused. Okay. So grabbing that gradient tool, clicking and dragging. Gradient, because I went back in time, I lost it. Okay, there we go. So we've got a gradient applied here. To make changes to the gradient, it's actually quite simple. So you're like, ugh, black and gray, that's disgusting. So click on your gradient slider to activate it. And the first thing we're going to do is let's just double check in the drop down in the gradient panel that you don't have it set to RGB. If you click on this here and you double click on one of the color stops, which is what we're going to do, in here, there's another drop down. So if you can't change it up here, you can change it in here. And you can either change it to RGB or CMYK. It does not matter. So either one of these options, it's going to give you more options here. So I just want you to select a color from one side of your apple to the other. Again, you might have to change that color. going back to my stroke for some reason, but that's okay. All right, and we can still make changes to this here. My gradient keeps popping down. I want to make this a little bit lighter. I feel like it's too dark. Okay. So now that we've got a decent gradient, I want to show you that you can still make minor changes. Whenever this is selected, watch as it happens in my apple. So I'm just dragging one of the paint buckets from left to right so it increases the amount of yellow. Or I can increase the amount of green and where it blends, and you can see it happening in real time on your apple. If I want to add another color, I can do that by clicking in the gray space. See how I get a plus sign with my arrow? If I click in this gray space beneath the slider, it's going to add another color stop. I can double click that color stop and now I can change my color. So I can again continue to add more colors as I go. All right. Now, what I want to show you is you're like, well, I don't want it going straight up and down. Well, here's how you change it so it's not going straight up and down. It's this angle option here. So if you click on the angle option, if I want it going up and down rather than side to side, you're going to click on the 90 degrees clockwise or counterclockwise. Either way, it's up to you. Okay, so that's 90 degrees counterclockwise. This is 90 degrees clockwise. You can also change the color within here by clicking. Oops, if you click, you can change the angle, and this is kind of tricky. You got to get right on it so you get that little double-headed arrow. You'll see it. You got to get right close to one of those angles, and you can move your gradient this way as well. You can also change where those sliders start and stop on your gradient tool itself. So I'm just dragging those sliders. This takes some playing around with. So it's a lot of letting your cursor hover until the options pop up. You can drag this out. I can make it bigger and smaller. Okay. That's the linear option. Try that now if you haven't already started. All right, the last thing I want to show you is I want you to show you how to change your gradient type. Now right now I'm linear, which means it's going to go top, down, left, right, so it's going to go in a line. You can go radial, which means it's circular. And again, you can drag that out too. So like if you want to do a highlight, so if I want to do my highlight for my apple here, and I want to blend this more. And then when you're happy with it, you can just click off on that. All right, so try either a linear or a radial gradient. It's up to you, and then go to File, Save. All right. We are almost done here today, guys. The last thing I want to show you is a review of something called the Swatches panel and then our effects. So let's go ahead and open up the Symbols panel. I'm sorry, I said Swatches panel, I meant Symbols. Open up your Symbols panel. Remember, symbols are simply like the clip art. Real basic, different little pre-drawn things. And to be honest, they were drawn by a designer in Illustrator, and they've just been saved in here. So these were originally all done by hand, but we're gonna cheat a little bit and we're gonna use something they've done. So let's click on the library button at the bottom left of the panel, and we're gonna open up the dot pattern vector pack. There's some really cool ones in here. You can use whatever one you want, I don't care, but you're gonna click one and you're gonna drag and drop it right from that panel right onto your image. While it's still selected, we're going to do two things. The first thing we're going to do is right up at the top in your control panel, you should have a button that says Break Link. You also might be able to right click on the symbol and go to Break Link, but you want to click Break Link. We're going to group this. We're going to go to Object, Group. And now we can change our colors. Breaking the link allows you to change the colors. You can add and delete from it if you wanted to. And in fact, I'll show you that. So if I ungrouped it for a second, actually, I'm going to change my color first. So let's change our color first. Pick any color you want. So if I click off, you can kind of see what that looks like. Okay. If it's not grouped, if you click on one of those little dots, remember you go to Select, Same, Fill in Stroke. So now we've got those selected. I'm going to group those now. Group, and I'm going to send those to the back. Object Arrange. Send to back, so I want it behind my apple. And then if I click off, so you can see it's behind the apple now. Isn't that great? I'm going to show you how you can delete portions. So I'm going to ungroup this for a minute. And then so I can come through and I can highlight and I can be like, I don't want that section. I can even click one at a time. So you can fine tune, you can manipulate these symbols. So go ahead, apply one of these, break the link, change the color, make modifications, and then go to File, Save. All right. Last thing that is mandatory is we're going to apply one of the effects. I want you to click on the Apple tool. Sorry, click on the background Apple. Boy, I'm off today. And we're going to go up to Effects. Now this is really important. I do not want you clicking on the Photoshop effects. I want you to click on the, we're up here in Illustrator effects, and I want you to go to Stylize. We're going to click on the drop shadow. This is really important, is that if you haven't saved before you do one of these effects, you need to make sure you do, because sometimes these effects can freeze your computer up because it requires a lot of RAM from the computer, okay? So make sure you save. And you're always going to want to click that preview option. It's going to slow the whole process down, but that's okay. So you can see it's added a drop shadow to our apple. A couple things about this. Obviously, yes, you can change your color, so I could even make it obnoxiously pink if I wanted to. To change the direction, that means right now, is kind of off to the right and down a little bit. So it's just like in geometry class, I know, grown, X and Y, just like an X and Y on your grid or graph. Your X is going to control right and left. Your Y is going to control how up and down it is. So if I wanted to put the drop shadow above, which is weird, you would put a negative value. Below is always in the positive territory. You can increase the amount of blur, which means just how much it's going to fade it out. You can take down the opacity, which is how see-through it is. And then when you're happy, click OK to that. All right, I'm going to let you play a couple more things with these effects. I'm going to show you what they do, and then we're going to be done, and you can play around a little bit more. I want you to click on the stem portion of your apple. We're going to go back up to effects, and this time we are going to drop down into these Photoshop effects. And I have to warn you, some of these work great, some of these don't. Again, save if you haven't saved. Let's go ahead and go into the texture one. And I want you to pick one of these. I don't care which one. If you've had Photoshop experience, they work just like the filters from Photoshop. It's going to add some great, interesting textures to it. I'm going to pick the grain. You can control the amount of that texture and click OK. Okay. The reason I went to the the texture ones is because some of the other ones don't work real well if it's a flat color shape. So, but what you can do is if I click on my leaf here, and I'm going to click on the different elements of the leaf. So I'm going to click on my couple of my little veins. And then I go into that, maybe into the artistic gallery or something. I can use some of these because it would apply it to multiple different effects. So you can get some more play. Okay, so go ahead and play around with those filter effects. If you want to play around a little bit more with some of the other ones, we'll get into some warping and distorting later. And we've done that with some of the things, but so play around a little bit. You have the rest of the hour to add any extra detail do you want to your apple, but we're going to go ahead and save. Make sure you get this far, but your apple can have all the extra added details you want as long as you've done the mandatory. Good job.